Today, we're looking at Diamine Havasu Turquoise. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, as you would expect, Diamine Havasu Turquoise is a turquoise ink, and it's a very lovely shade of turquoise. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Lamy All-Star with a 1.1 stub to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is a chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. And what we see is this is truly a turquoise. It's beautiful. It works its way up as very, very light, and then it becomes a much darker turquoise as you move up, and we get a nice dark line across the top. Now the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And the only real differences I'm seeing is a darker line across the bottom. It's a thick line, but it's darker across the bottom, which makes me feel like there might be a little bit of resistance to this ink, maybe. And some of the darker that moves up streaks its way up some. Now resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard might it be to clean from your pens? I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handles it very well. There is a little bit of spread in the writing, but it is absolutely legible, making this a great ink to use in a note-taking situation. Water reactivates and lifts almost all. We do start to see little bits of the white coming through at the bottom of that water circle, so it makes me feel like water might be all that's necessary. Now, if it seems a little bit more stubborn, when we look at the pen flush, it definitely does more work than the water did. We see a lot of white areas of the paper coming through, and we start to see some of the dots of the rhodia. Bleach, as would be expected, obliterates it off the page, but there should be no reason to go to bleach to get this out of your pens. Now, as far as flow, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Diamine Havasu Turquoise has a viscosity of 2.2, making it normal. Now, it's on the lower end of normal, but it is still normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on my Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Diamine Havasu Turquoise has an average dry time of 19 seconds, making it normal again. Now this one's the higher side of normal, but still normal. Fantastic. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone. With no feather, spread, halo, sheen, it does offer some shading. It goes from, it just goes a slightly darker tone in the shading. It does nice. It doesn't shade as much as some other turquoise inks. 13 seconds to dry. Now a noticeably darker tone with the medium. We have no feather, spread, halo, sheen. We get much more shading where it goes on much lighter in areas and then gets darker. And we see that a lot in over. Brown is very dark. We don't have any very light words. 19 seconds to dry. The scrubby for the extra fine and the medium show us more color variation than we actually get with this ink. It does have sort of some, it shows much more here than it does up here. The smear test says you could likely recover it if you smeared while you were writing. So Tomoe River, no bleeding, yes we have ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Tone of this ink is perfect for Lake Havasu. It's really almost perfect. I say perfect.
almost 100% perfect. Extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. It took 20 seconds to dry. The medium gives us a darker tone, more like we got with the 1.1, so that extra fine gives us the nicest tone of turquoise, I think. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 27 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium showed us no color variation. We didn't get any color variation. And the smear test, you wrote on Tomoe River, you don't get to recover a smear. Rhodia. Rhodia gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. It's a really dark turquoise here. Noticeably lighter tone for the extra fine with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade at all. 15 seconds to dry. Back to the dark tone that we had with the 1.1 on the medium with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, and 20 seconds to dry. Now when I wrote with this with my Lamy All-Star and a 1.1, I got exactly the same tone, exactly the same performance. The scrubby for both show us almost no color variation. We got almost none. The smear test, you could likely recover it. So what happens to the tone of this ink when we put it on yellow paper? So the yellow Rhodia has no bleeding and no ghosting. The tone changes. We get that more sort of teal turquoise on the yellow paper, so the yellow did affect it. It just means this isn't a saturated ink color that it lets it show through. It's a little more translucent as a tone or as a dye. That's all. The 1.1 had no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. Very nice right here. Very nice color. Not a turquoise, more of a teal, but super nice. Lighter tone for the extra fine. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 15 seconds to dry. The medium had no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 20 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both showed us no color variation. We got none, so any little bits we might have had, we don't. The smear test, you could still recover this. So Strathmore writing paper. The Strathmore, oops, almost. No bleeding. It seeped deep into the page in a few spots. They're really not showing on camera, but we have a few spots where it's seeping pretty deep into the page to where if it was a wetter nib, I might see some bleed through. No real ghosting. The 1.1 had no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Doesn't look turquoise anymore. Really looks much more of a blue. Looks much more a shade of blue. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone with no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 7 seconds to dry. The medium goes to the dark tone that we got with the 1.1 again. Still more of a blue than a turquoise at this point. The medium had no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It only took 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both the extra fine and the medium showed us no color variation. We didn't get any color variation. And a smear test, you could likely recover it. So the P. Berger paper, it's a French rule paper. It's really a student paper. Lots of bleed through. Lots and lots of bleed through. So much so that any ghosting wouldn't matter because you couldn't use the backside of this paper. The 1.1 has crazy feathering all over it. It's blurry feathering. Blurry. The whole thing is blurry. To me, it doesn't look good. Not at all. It does have spread. It has no halo, no sheen, and no shade. The extra fine has no feathering. No, it's got a couple little spots. The 5's got a couple little spots. The bottom of Quick has a couple little spots. Not distracting, not really a problem. Okay, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 5 seconds to dry. We go to the medium, we get the darker tone that we had with the 1.1. We do have spread, we do have feathering all over, and it's gross. It's gross to look at, just, ugh. No halo, no sheen, no shade, 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both showed us no color variation. We didn't get any color variation. And the smear test says you could likely recover it, and I'll believe that. And that's all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Diamine's Havasu Turquoise, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I've chosen Diamine's Ochre because it's a beautiful brown color to go with this great shading turquoise. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Diamine's Havasu Turquoise? Now, Robert Oster's like the king of turquoise inks, but this one really does get in the running. It is a beautiful tone. And for anybody that's ever been to Lake Havasu, it's like a perfect match. It's where the London Bridge is. It's gorgeous. The shading that this ink can give is very nice, but the tone is a perfect match, which makes me really like this ink. It's not named that, but looks slightly off. Gorgeous ink. Thanks for watching.